This chapter is about how discipline-based art education that focuses on multicultural roles and functions of art will help all students find a place for art in their lives. Also, it will help them to understand that members of diverse cultural groups have commonly shared needs for art. One issue that literature on multicultural education has faced is the fact that much of it contains conflicting concepts and goals. Unless educators find a way to address art in a multicultural society, many people will probably not be willing to implement a curriculum that embraces pluralism.
Ralph, A. Janie, A. And Lisa, for your essay, Jebediah Springfield, Super Fraud, F.
But it's all true.
Ugh, this is nothing but dead white male bashing from a PC thug. It's women like you who keep the rest of us from landing a husband.
The answer is conflict. As previously stated, conflict within the concepts and goals of multicultural art education has caused a constant shifting in its definitions. An even more daunting issue would be the implementation of a culturally all-inclusive curriculum. For even after a definition is agreed upon, its implementation is going to be a touchy subject. Many big-name critics answer this question by saying that it is an impossible task. Gilbert has called it preposterous, and continued by saying he can't conceive of a teacher who, without dissolving into emotional deterioration, disassociation, and splitting of the personality, could possibly serve all of the diverse masters suggested as multicultural education. Art educator Peter Smith says that many of the approaches are too focused on social issues and less focused on art. How shall we choose? With so many demographics that require a sensitive approach, these perspectives are not all that unreasonable. So the question is still begging for an answer. How does one make manageable sense out of a vast diversity of ideas? Chalmers answers this question by first defining multiculturalism. According to her, it implies respect for behaviors, dispositions, outlooks, and values that are not solely from one dominant culture. She states this while also emphasizing on the fact that ethnic heritage is not the only thing that constitutes one's culture. Things like sexuality, social class, and even age are all integral factors of your cultural identity. Sarah Ballard, editor of Teaching Tolerance, states, "We must help our children find a place in our pluralistic world. In doing so, we must avoid stereotyping, desegregation, indoctrination, and assigning blame. We must confront problems of prejudice and inequality in our classrooms as well as in our society." Why is multicultural art education necessary? To start, let's think about how the North American approach to art education has given way to racism. Aside from curriculum-based issues, schools that are culturally homogeneous present another issue. The only other time we really see this word is when we buy a carton of milk. If you leave raw milk in a jar on a table, it will separate into cream and milk. Homogeny happens when you take the milk and shake the shit out of it until it is all mixed together, thus giving you a smooth texture with no variation. Likewise, a school in a small town with little ethnic diversity to begin with is not likely to embrace differences outside of their own cultural bubble. So why is multicultural education important? The short answer would be to challenge the limited views that the world is providing for them. As stated by famed historian Arthur Schlesinger, in an excess of zeal, well-intentioned people seek to transform our system of education from a means of creating one people into a means of promoting, celebrating, and perpetuating separate ethnic origins and identities. The balance is shifting from the unum to the pluribus. As art teachers, we can approach this through an understanding that art forms may vary, but we all make art for similar reasons. One example could be the First Nations people of the Northwest, where they create poles that function very similarly to photo albums that are more common in Western cultures. According to educator James A. Banks, a curriculum that largely ignores the experiences, cultures, and histories of other ethnic, racial, cultural, and religious groups has negative consequences for both the dominant culture and cultural and ethnic minority students. More specifically, it perpetuates ethnocentrism and racism. This can result in students having a false sense of superiority and a misleading foundation for their relationship with other minority groups. Also, it denies the mainstream group a view of their own culture through the lenses of minority groups, thus denying them a full understanding of their own unique culture. To conclude, the author states that cultural relativism is the approach towards art education that she most strongly advocates. Cultural relativism is the co-equality of fundamentally different frames of thought and action characteristics of diverse cultures. Now that we have defined multiculturalism, and we have seen why it is important, let's look at how we should approach it as educators. According to Banks, Gibson, Sleater, and Grant, who are major contributors to the research of this book, there are 5 distinguishable meanings of the term that are applicable to art education. Number 1. The teaching of different content to those who are not from the dominant culture. Number 2. Emphasis on human relations such as cooperation and mutual appreciation. Number 3. Emphasis on single group studies of particular cultures. 4. Emphasis on the promotion of cultural pluralism, diversity, and social equity. 5. Emphasis on social reconstruction and social action. In conclusion, while the impossible task of approaching every single culture may be an unrealistic objective, we as teachers can achieve a higher level of cultural fluency among our students through a multicultural curriculum that focuses on highlighting our common threads as human beings that make art.